Welcome to the Laws of Style, featuring conversations on creativity, fashion, and the law from the leading edge of our economy and culture. Hosted by noted fashion lawyer Douglas Hand.
Welcome to the Laws of Style, downloading to you from the offices of HBA, High above Bryant Park in the Garment District of New York City. I'm your host, Douglas Hand, fashion lawyer, fashion law professor, and self-styled well-dressed man. And I'm here today with the founder of the footwear phenomenon direct-to-consumer vertically integrated brand GREATS, Ryan Babenzien. Ryan, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
So a little background on you, just to get out. You started as a talent agent, and then started through that association working with some brands, I guess, to put talent in touch with certain brands. Tell us about those days, because that's somewhat adjacent to what a lawyer does. And so for the segment of our listeners that are in the legal profession, that might be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it was a long time ago.
Yep.
And it was, the early days of the internet, actually. And what became clear, talent was always a brand to me, like developing acting talent was like building a brand. Even though I had never built a brand, that was my filter of how I viewed it.
Yeah.
And from there, I actually, when I was at ICM, I remember pitching an idea. We should represent brands.
Right.
And build like a world around brands and pollinate with our talent. And there's this internet thing that's going to create this giant pipe of
personal brands.
Right.
And
I remember the guys looking at me like, you are fucking crazy.
What are you?
Right.
What?
And they thought it was just really, it didn't resonate back then.
Yeah.
But then I became a manager. So I left being an agent and actually became a manager. And that gave me a lot more creative freedom to do things with clients. And I started consulting brands.
Okay.
So I was working with some of the streetwear brands of the day, Mecca, Aniche,
Right.
those types of.
And they were clients of the firm, or
They were clients of me.
Okay.
So they were not officially on the client list, but I was consulting on the side. I was mid-20s or late 20s, hustling just to make more money, frankly.
Yeah.
And it was a space that I knew really well, so it was fun, and there was a need for it because it was uncharted territory.
Yeah.
And I remember, they wanted to get like this jersey on Ice Cube, who was about to do this new movie.
Yeah.
And they were like, "We've got to get this Mecca jersey. Can we do it in the colors
Just
he wants?"
in the public, or in some sort of he was doing a step and repeat?
There was a scene in the movie. The movie hadn't even started shooting yet.
Okay.
And the movie was Fridays.
Yeah.
And there was this moment where there was a scene where like we felt like this would be a great place to get like Mecca branding. And ultimately the deal didn't work. But like that was the way we were thinking about it. Like how do we use these vehicles where youth powered vehicles, a lot of music videos as well, and get these brands into the stream of what youth was watching, because that movie became something, and MTV was something really important. It was like the Instagram of the day, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's how I was kind of merging those two.
Got it. So also Echo, and then to more institutional brands, Puma, and then K-Swiss.
Yeah, I mean, Puma and K-Swiss I had left the talent world altogether, and I was the head of entertainment marketing at Puma, and that was a legitimate, meaningful
That was
role.
your real job,
That was
right?
a real job
Yeah.
with, real responsibility and budget and managing a P&L of marketing, and we did really progressive stuff there as well. I mean, taking what I knew from entertainment, understanding who I thought was going to be a meaningful talent, and trying to marry them before they became huge.
Yeah.
And, I did a deal at Puma. The first deal I ever did at Puma was with Estelle.
Okay.
She had a record coming out. She wasn't quite there yet.
Right.
And I did a deal where Kristen Siriano, who had won the first year of
and is still a very
and
relevant,
still is a relevant name,
designer
so
today.
Kristen had just
probably
won
more so.
Yeah,
just given that
he has
right
built
out.
a career.
Yeah.
Christian design, anything. He took anything from Puma he wanted from the apparel collection, cut it up and made unique pieces for Estelle. And Estelle did 3 in-store concerts for free and wore these things. And we got, it was like, how do we create earned media around these things?
Yeah, around essentially barter deals, which is such
basically
a great way to do it because really...
I paid her $10,000.
Okay.
Sorry, Estelle. That was a long time ago.
So more institutional settings, maybe a little bit more hoops to jump through.
Mm-hmm.
But then you were given, in a sense, kind of the keys to an old tennis brand, Boast.
Yeah.
Maybe describe that, and then then we'll get into the good stuff.
Yeah, Boast. I really thought I was going to spend the better part of 10 years of my career at that point with Boast and reimagining. Boast is for lack of a better word, a streetwear brand. Like we were going to take this, what was once a very conservative tennis brand, even though it had a maple leaf and it had edge, it was still a tennis brand. Yeah. And we were going to reimagine it and make it more relevant for youth and streetwear. And I felt like, we had a really good plan on doing that. Sadly, I learned pretty early that the owner of the brand just didn't have the same vision that they had hired me to execute, and some other things that caused me to not stay very long. But what I'm very proud of, Tommy Hilfiger bought that brand.
Yep.
And
they have rebooted it once again,
and
as I'm sure you know.
I met with Tommy about 8 months ago, and he said, "We're just gonna do what you were gonna do." Pretty much. And then he showed me all the collection, and that was flattering because life is about timing, and I think I could have done something amazing with that brand. We didn't have the right mix of people or partnership, but that was a fun learning experience, even though it was a year.
So you probably have always had an entrepreneurial gene to you, but post Boast, you then decided I'm gonna start my own brand.
Yeah.
Emotionally, sort of financially, how did you come to that determination? Who was in it with you? And what were your first steps? Because we have a lot of entrepreneurs and students of entrepreneurism, entrepreneurial theory.
Yeah.
And I think that moment is a very critical moment that very few people actually execute on. A lot go to the diving board. Some come down midway up the steps. Some walk all the way to the end. You jumped in.
I'm a jumper.
Yeah, with a double Sukahara
Yeah, I did
twist.
a triple Indy.
Yeah.
I just my nature. I have a high tolerance for risk or pain, maybe. And the process was there was other digitally native brands. D2C at the time is what was the moniker. And I thought, the model really works for footwear. People have been buying footwear online for a decade more. Zappos was a monster.
Right.
So there was a familiarity with the customer, hey, I'm okay buying shoes online, but nobody had started a digitally native sneaker or footwear brand at that time. So I thought the category made a lot of sense.
Yeah. And you'd seen Warby succeed.
Right.
You'd seen other examples in other categories.
Warby had been on the way. Bonobos was doing it. Everlane was doing it. And I thought the business model was the only model for brands that were going to succeed from that point onward, because wholesale was waning, if you will, pretty fast. And, the thing about the wholesale business as it was when it was healthy, you could start a business with very little money. And if you got in that right retail store, let's say Barney's, and they paid you on time, you could fund your growth without raising a lot of capital. You could make things and sell them and keep going. And that was your financing source.
Yeah.
But once that started to stop, and it really did, you couldn't really build a company through the wholesale channel first.
Yeah.
You needed another way.
Yeah.
And digital provided that. Now you still needed capital. You actually needed more capital that way.
Yeah.
And we raised a little bit of money. We raised a half a
So
million.
pre-launch, you raised
We
money.
raised a $500,000 pre-launch in a convertible note. For you listeners out there, if you want to be specific. Today, I would, I think a safe is what people are using these days. But seed funding for brands, by the way, today is not very easy.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the venture stuff later. But that is how we launched it. And John Buscemi was my co-founder, and we had been friends, and we were both in the industry, and we launched it together. It was very, raw. We raised this money, and then it was.
Well, you bring up an interesting point that usually I bring up in a question, which is the fact that in the traditional model, maybe even less so for footwear, but certainly for apparel and some areas of accessories, the barriers to entry were much lower because wholesale accounts would not only finance you, but also, in effect, promote you because they had so many channels of distribution that you were kind of everywhere. If you were with 4 big wholesale accounts, you were national, if not gaining international reputation as a brand. And season to season, you at least, if you were hot enough, could get covered your production costs, and the rest was gravy.
Yep.
Today, you've got to build out that website, but you also have to get the customers to come to it.
Yeah.
And that's the customer acquisition cost is massive where it wasn't. So I'll pause you here and sort of ask the further question. Do you think it's the barriers to entry are now higher, even though you're closer to the customer because of the cost of customer acquisition these days, that it's not just a great idea or a snazzy website that's going to draw them in today?
Yeah. It's a really good point, because when D2C first started, you could arbitrage Facebook traffic for pennies, pennies per customer. Now I know brands that are paying $100 for a customer. You're literally giving away $100.
And that may not be a loyal customer.
Right.
Yeah.
So the barrier to entry to start a brand and build a website is low. The cost to operate is high, like from the get-go, unless you can have some magic that just happens from a celebrity wearing your stuff overnight, and
or
automatic.
you yourself
Correct.
are a celebrity.
That's right. And we're seeing that with influencers.
Exactly. Okay. Well, we'll touch on some of those topics as we go through, but I didn't want to break your flow. In terms of, okay, so you decided to do it. What other challenges? I mean, so now you had to make shoes, right? I mean, you had to build out a website, you had to market it, you had to make shoes. I mean, who did what? What were the special powers the founders brought to the table?
There was just 2 of us, so we both did
everything.
But I'd say John was managing the factory on a day-to-day basis, and I was doing everything else. Like, John didn't come to one fundraising meeting.
Right.
He was like, I was already moved back to New York.
He was busy making trains run on time.
He was out in California, and we were just dividing and conquering.
Yeah.
I did the site. I worked with the design team. He did the shoes. We only had 2.
Okay.
And we made 3 colors each. But he built those. And then we launched.
Okay. Well, so for the one listener, perhaps, who is not familiar with the product, from a design perspective, from a brand ethos, just tell us about GREATS.
Yeah, I mean, the thesis was, the name GREATS is derived from what we thought our design thesis. I mean, our thesis was, we're going to pick the greatest silhouettes in men's footwear, sneakers, and work with those. Now, at any given time, there might be 3 or 4 in the market, and there might be 12 in total that come in and out in time. Runner, court shoe, high top, but the silhouettes that dominate the space are pretty tried and true.
Yeah.
It's very rare that anybody invents a silhouette that has never been done before, and it becomes a classic. Now, there are brands that invent silhouettes, and they become a very fast trend, but they're very short-lived, especially in digital world. Like, in today's world, fashion trend is, it's light speed.
Would you worry if one of your designs came out of the gates smoking hot in terms of its long-term viability?
I wouldn't say I'd worry, but we weren't hoping for it, right? And look, I'm all for tailwinds. So if you design something and it becomes really hot, great. Just be prepared that will end one day. And what does that look like?
Right.
Because if you're raising money on some growth curve that's driven by a hyper trend, and the hyper trend ends, and it will, and nobody knows if it ends in a week or a year, then reality hits you.
And you're not a technology company, so to speak, in terms of the product. And so therefore I would posit humankind's been designing for the human foot.
Yeah. Forever.
Exactly. So what are you really going to come out with?
Yeah.
That unless it's got a technological element,
Yeah.
is going to be that hot and that lasting.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit for our listeners just on the size of the footwear industry. By some reports, a $125 billion industry. It's obviously been, in the menswear space in particular, a huge growth industry and a huge source of revenues and traffic for retailers. Of that, if you agree with 125 billion or not, but of that amount, what would you say the percentage of athletic versus casual versus dress shoes would comprise the overall market?
I think the casual athletic is like 60 billion, I think, if the last I looked, and they're blended together.
So would that include a loafer, like a leather loafer,
No,
or
I
is
think
it?
that sits in a shoe.
Okay.
For me, at least by definition, it would.
Right.
For me, I'm not sure how.
Loafer's what your lawyer wears.
Right. Well, you're wearing a double monk today, so
I am wearing a
that's a
double monk.
proper shoe.
Yes.
Probably bench made in London by his guy Giuseppe, who came over from Italy.
Well, this is a little where I'm going with it. So 60 million is essentially hybrids of tennis shoes, running shoes, but on a casual platform, not intended for performance.
Right, non-sport use.
Right. So give me the other breakdowns of the other, roughly 60.
I don't know, actually.
Okay.
I really don't.
Because you don't play in those spaces.
Well, no, it's not like market size. The market's gotten bigger, by the way, since we started GREATS. Like in the sneaker casual space, that market's grown.
Yeah.
We just were like, that's a big enough market. Like whatever the number was, we're like, it's big enough, and we don't know what the actual number is.
And you don't know Giuseppe.
I do know Giuseppe, but my Giuseppe actually still lives in Italy.
Okay.
But the bigger point was, and market growth was what I was interested in. I said, look, the casualization of the workplace is going to continue to drive casual footwear, and in order for proper footwear, which I would like classic shoes, leather-soled shoes, whether they're monks or slip-ons, doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Those shoes will have a harder time at becoming the dominant shoe style again as workplaces remain casual. And I haven't seen the reversal of the workplace becoming more formal.
Yeah.
And as that continues, we stay there.
Yeah. Well,
You're the only guy I know that wears a suit and tie every day.
Well, and this is what I write about in the Laws of Style.
Yeah.
I talk about this shift in workplace norms that have also hit law firms and accounting firms and investment banks. And most firms are casual all week unless you got to go to court or you've got a big client meeting. That being said, we have seen returns to more conservative dress codes with financial crises. Mm-hmm. So, we may be due for one in a year or two.
I know, but that's all bullshit. Because the way they dress to invoke confidence.
Right.
That is the reason, right? We all have been taught. I used to wear a suit every day too, right?
Yep.
Like your client needs to look at you as a professional. Mm-hmm. And that's it. It's a uniform that represents responsibility and intelligence.
Well, and I'm going to give you that because I think that is right.
Works.
Yeah. Well, and it works because there's legacy attached to it.
Correct.
For sure. But I will say, and I'll speak now just about men because I can't speak with authority about women and how they present themselves in the workplace. I think it's a very interesting topic, and I'll cover it on one of these podcasts. But It also has the added benefit, I will say, as a guy who does wear the suit is a wonderful vehicle for looking good and hiding bodily flaws and kind of having this eudaimon kind of shoulders to waist ratio and put togetherness that is hard to replicate in more casual clothing unless you yourself are physically fit.
100% agree with you, and I would even say it's really hard for a person who doesn't have the suit to actually be seen as a stylish person.
Yeah.
Because now when you lose this, like, armor's not the right word, but it does represent something well. And if you have a decent fitting suit anywhere in the world, people are gonna just take a little notice, right? Yeah. If you walk in like a slob like me in a t-shirt and a pair of pants that didn't Pesco do this show?
He has not done it yet.
Oh well,
yeah.
These are from
he
his
keeps
store.
bouncing around.
These are from his store.
Okay, Magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I said it right.
You did, but like it's harder to be perceived to be stylish when you don't have what is more traditional. Like it really, you get style points by being together like that.
I also feel that for a lot of clients, and again, my clients are all in fashion and retail, so I think, and you know my rate. You know, I mean, I'm close to $1,000 an hour, right? So if you're spending on me, you want to see also, I think, that there is almost like a genuflection to the seriousness of the work. And if you think that I'm being irreverent about that or casual about that or dressing the same way I might if I was lounging poolside, it just would rub you the wrong way. So there are a number of reasons for a service professional that, in particular, you know, like a lawyer who's not necessarily adding to revenue, is just hopefully, you know, protecting things and getting a deal done, to look the part. So
I understand it well, and what is the saying, like, dress for the role you want to be,
right? Or the job you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
I just think the world has shifted.
The world has indeed shifted. That is undeniable.
There's a saying that I like, and it comes from the startup land. It's like, hey, the guys in suits look really important until you realize they work for the guys in t-shirts.
Right.
And like, there's billionaire startup guys, not that I'm one of them, but those are the guys that they're talking about.
For sure. 1,000%. And that has become a little bit of a uniform, which kind of looks, on some who are faking it, who you know aren't billionaires, a little silly.
Yeah, it does.
Honestly. But I do think, you know, we communicate a lot about how we present ourselves. And I think, again, for a service provider who is charging, it definitely makes sense to make sure you're not ruffling any feathers in that regard.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. So back to sort of its impact on the market. For sure, dress shoes as a market must be an eroding category.
Yeah.
While you make casual shoes, you make them very well, and you make them in Italy, and you do that for a reason. Do you have any concerns that certain craftsmanship may be leaking away from the system because the grandson of the zapateria in Spain or is no longer drawn to that craft?
Yeah, I do. I think, the country that saw it the most was America.
Yeah.
On every piece of clothing, including shoes. And we actually tried to make shoes here in Maine 3 years ago. And it was frustrating because it wasn't about price. I said, I don't care what this costs. Just make me this. I need this. And these guys were great hand sewers that's the section of Maine that still exists.
Yeah.
Like a hand sewn moccasin.
Right.
And I wanted to do something. The upper was traditional, but the bottom was going to be a running sole.
Okay.
And they just couldn't figure out how to marry these two.
Wow. Where is that region of Maine? I'm curious.
Where is that?
That section of Maine, where does that expertise reside?
It's just outside of.
Because I know there's Quaddies, and I know
it's just outside of the big city. Not the big
Portland?
city. Yeah, Portland.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Kind of the burbs of Portland, and it was really frustrating to me because I was like, guys, I'm willing to pay the premium, put this on the map,
Yeah.
and a young new company brand. Like we were, we get a lot of press and awareness.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't
More than quaddies.
more than quaddies, which I know well. I wore them as a kid.
Yeah.
And they couldn't do it. And I wound up making that shoe in the Dominican Republic. And in 1 week, by the way, DR has probably the best hand sewers. That's where most of, Timberland's leather is coming from. And Sperry's boat shoes are made. And the reason they left Maine is because they're more innovative. And anyway, I had that shoe in a week.
Wow.
That was like the moment I realized, like, talent. People can talk about our current administration talking about bringing jobs back to America. I'm all for it. Except if you're going to compete on the world stage, like, there is a skill set that we just don't have, at least for this stuff.
Yeah.
And I worry about it in Italy because I think it's all kind of, the talent is older, and it's
not being replenished.
like a little, but not in a way that at some point it might just die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now at the same time, we haven't really commercialized no hands on a shoe. Like every shoe has hands on it.
Yeah.
They're touching it. It's very
Well,
rare
it's
that a shoe is made from top to bottom. Like the only people that have accomplished that, as far as I know, are Adidas. And they made samples. They're not like commercializing that yet.
Well, to geek out a little bit,
Yeah.
walk us through shoe production. One of your classic, the Royale.
Yeah.
Walk us through that production in a minute.
From start, like before we designed it, or now that it's in the
No,
market?
let's assume it's designed,
Yeah.
and you've got, but walk us through with relatively non-technical terms,
Yeah.
but you can use the word last, and you can use the word
Yeah.
upper, and
Well, now that shoe is really one of our best sellers, it is the best seller. The pattern's been made, the lasts have been made, so they've been commercialized. We have hundreds of them, multiple sizes. So the process now goes faster. And for us now, it's just about, we have this core business around these core colors, and then we update them every quarter, every season, every year. And that's where like the material selection and the color selection that's the art of like what colors are going to matter.
yeah.
But to be perfectly honest, like the process now on that shoe is quite simple. We're not re-engineering it. We did some update on comfort because we felt like we could improve the way it felt
Okay.
through an improvement on the insole, but it wasn't a redesign. We just went to Ortholite and picked a really great, memory foam.
Yeah.
And so it's not complicated.
Yeah.
The complication is in designing it, the sampling it, the developing, and then getting it right,
Yeah.
getting it fit right. Once that's done, but I've simplified that, but that's the hard part.
Yeah. Well, so you have competitors. I mean, you'd probably list a lot of brands as competitors, but I think for our listeners, maybe Rothy's or Allbirds, Veja. What distinguishes GREATS from those propositions, whether it's product or the retail experience?
Yeah. Well, I don't consider Rothy's or Allbirds a competitor.
Okay.
Our similarity ends when like the digital part, but they're really very unique things. Veja, on the other hand, I would say is a competitor. And the founder and I, we sat on a panel together. Like, he's a great guy, and his passion.
You guys are only splitting $60 billion, so yeah, you guys should be
There's plenty to go around. But our position on what GREATS is like, we make premium quality essentials. We play in fashion, but we're not a fashion brand. We're not going to set the world on fire of developing a silhouette that a fashion house might try to. And we provide value in the category of premium, but we will go into other categories of price. I mean, we had started in multiple price categories. we scaled that back, but now we're going to go back into it now that we have, the resources that you really need to kind of play in multiple prices, aka customer segmentation. But royal, premium, quality, essential.
Yeah. Well, so pivoting a little bit to recent events, congratulations on completing a M&A transaction.
Congratulations to you.
With my help, with my
firm's
help, with the brand Steve Madden, the company Steve Madden. I guess what was the logic behind the transaction? And I know there's a great deal of logic behind it. And after we go through that, let's also talk about the process to the extent we can without broaching any confidentiality of just engaging in an M&A transaction. But first and foremost, the business logic behind it.
So in our life, we realized that, and I said this in the very beginning, even though we raised venture capital, that it became pretty clear to me that venture capital and brand doesn't really mix.
Yeah.
They're looking for, 10x returns on an entire fund size, which is impossible to do in a fashion play. You need more time. You can do it. You can't do it in the window
5 to 7
where
years.
the LPs are trying to exit in their fund.
Yeah.
So I learned that very early on, and I was like, okay, venture is going to be probably not.
And how many rounds of venture financing had you done before the transaction?
We had done 2 seed rounds, and then we did a bigger round.
10 million?
A little less.
Okay.
With basically it was a private equity shop that functioned like a VC fund. And again, we learned, PE mentality is also very unique, and there's a kind of a method. And for a small growing digital brand, probably not.
Yeah.
There's probably a misalignment on how to. So here I was. Now I'm like, okay, I'm going to go raise my last round. Where am I going to get it? I didn't think either of those buckets were going to make a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And I had met Steve in 2016. They asked me to just come over. They were like, hey, we think what you're doing is really amazing. What's your vision? How do you see the world? And we just talked about that. And I really liked him. Him and Ed Rosenfeld, the CEO. I think Steve's an entrepreneur. He built this thing from zero, and
for sure.
And
similar background in a way,
very,
I think. Yeah. You guys are simpatico, I think, in that
much.
way.
We have a lot of similarities. Yeah. I just had dinner with him Monday, and it's I just like him. We have fun together. Mm-hmm. And I thought, if we could raise capital, but capital alone doesn't solve the complexities of our business. It doesn't give us the scale we would get right away. I could hire the greatest people in every role. They're not going to get leverage on supply chain, tanneries, factories, freight rates, logistics, all of the nuts and bolts behind the scene.
Yeah.
You just got to grow into those.
Yeah, you just got to be bigger.
With this, we could plug right in. So I really started to think maybe we should merge and just we're really good at brand. We can build brand and community and marketing. That we're really good at that. And you guys are incredible at supply chain and development and production. Mm-hmm. So what if we partnered? And that's how that happened.
Great. Now to the process, which...
Oh, boy. Do you have a tissue?
Relatively smooth, but not without, the typical, there are always things that come up. What was it like working through that process? And did you ever feel that with lawyers involved that sometimes messages or lines got crossed?
Yeah. Well, one, thank you, because you were part of that process not on the brand side, but on the personal side.
On the Ryan side.
We had corporate counsel that we had for years, and they had their corporate counsel. And I think we saw miscommunications at times when there wasn't a lot, by the way, but what would happen then is like Ed and I would just have a conversation, like off, like, hey, what do you want here? What do we want here? The lawyers can do whatever language they need to do, but what are we trying to fix? And that's how we would get through those. But to be honest, there weren't a lot.
Yeah. There weren't in my experience, but they do happen. They're almost inevitable.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is, especially with that many chains of sort of the game of telephone. You know, you say cat and what comes out at the end is cup. And there's a big difference, right?
It's like Siri. It's like, no, that's not what I meant.
And then, you know, there are certain, I would say most deal lawyers can be collaborative.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important element because it is not the other side. It is two sides that are hopefully going to meet and merge. But you're an advocate for your client, and so you are sort of, if not jumping at shadows, you're the one that has to look into the dark corners for your client to make sure there's just no boogeymen in there, because there quite possibly can be. Yeah. So sometimes with the first communications of sort of, well, what am I? You're proposing hypos or what ifs that are undoubtedly more nefarious than what might, you know, actually happen in practice if you yourself don't know the industry very well. And this is where I find there can be a value when you do know the industry in terms of what the reality is. Because yes, in theory, with a certain provision that's got a certain wiggle room in it, someone who wanted to fuck you might take the position that this reads a certain way and therefore I'm going to do that. You have to look at the incentives around what circumstances would they do that in, and are those addressed elsewhere, before kind of alerting the client or maybe even freaking the client out about holes in the deal, so to speak.
I mean, I think like this process was an educational one for me. As an agent and manager, I had been on the deal side of things hundreds of times. And when a studio and an actor want to do a deal, that has to be mutual. Then there's contract stuff, right? But the deal is not going to be engineered by a lawyer if the sides don't want to make a deal. Yeah. Lawyers don't kill deals. They don't. They shouldn't.
They shouldn't.
They should. They.
Sometimes they do.
I know, but
but they shouldn't. You're right.
Shouldn't.
When two principals,
that's a service now that's being now like who wins, like who benefits. And I haven't been on monster M&A deals, so I can understand how they fall apart. But when you have two interested parties that want to do something together, that's the most important, right?
Part of the difficulty as well, I find, even from someone as educated as you are in terms of deal-making process, because not only had you performed as an agent sort of with smaller but no less important deals for individuals and studios and media content, but your rounds of financing. I mean, you'd seen the process. But a change of control transaction, an M&A transaction, it is kind of brain surgery insofar as you're doing a deal, but all the neurons need to line up afterwards. And there's so much risk associated with a living, breathing thing like a business that for the non-initiated, it's kind of like, why is this taking so long?
Yeah.
Why are there so many issues? Well, if Steve's taken over, some of your employees, well, what's been going on with those employees? How have they been documented? Are they exempt, non-exempt? Oh, how has he treated them? Well, there just are a lot of things.
I'm having flashbacks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there was nothing about employees.
No, but because what's interesting is we're in this now 3 weeks from like closing.
Yep.
So now there's like a whole other sequence of like getting on
integration
systems and payments and process and taking our kind of ERP and shifting we're doing more work now than we've ever done as a brand, just getting ready to continue to grow. Because we're going to take on but I knew that, right? That's kind of what like In order to get access to all that stuff, we have to be on the same, literally like same system.
Yeah.
From an accounting standpoint, payables, receivables, how we place orders with the factory, that all has to mesh, and that's work.
Yeah. Well, that's in a way the brain surgery involved in the deal itself, in some ways, but all really compressed time-wise.
Yeah.
So again, congrats, fantastic. Looking forward to seeing what you can achieve next.
Me too.
We talked about how you named GREATS. And by the way, it's got such legs in terms of, beyond just footwear, right? GREATS is just a fantastic, it's one of those, I'm sure a lot of other people just hit their head like,
what? Yeah, everybody's like, how did you do that?
Yeah,
I mean, look, we think there's a lot of elasticity to the word, its applications, how we use it, for categories, for sure.
You didn't name the brand after yourself. No. Was there any desire to do that? I mean, you came from a different background.
Never.
Yeah.
Actually, John and I split as partners almost immediately. Not from any bad blood, just life. Mm-hmm. And we're still very close. John was meant to be the face of the brand because John's a colorful guy and well known and loves that role. I was just meant to be the guy that ran it.
Yeah.
And so no, we never, the thought of my name being on it never even crossed my mind. Have
you ever had conversations with Steve about, his name being on his brand?
No, but it's good. I will actually, because, you give up. I like not being anonymous. I truly do. Now you would not know that by the things I've had to do to become the front of the brand. Like I talk about the brand. I go on stage when asked. I'll do things.
You'll do podcasts.
I'll do podcasts. And I would have done business podcasts no matter what. But no, my desire to this day is not to be recognized. Mm-hmm. I don't mind if people know I'm the guy that started GREATS and built a brand. I don't really want to be that's him, like being able to see me. I'm not crazy about that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, and you should chat with Steve about it. And there are no Stuart Weitzman. I mean, the list could go on and on. Jimmy Choo. I mean, and for a lot of designers, I think what's behind that is some sense of just the authenticity of it. Mm-hmm. I'm putting my name on this product. But what comes with it, and you've now lived it, in the context of a sale of the business or rounds of financing, you're giving up control to a certain degree over your own legacy, which is very fraught with issues. Yeah,
I never thought of it that way.
Right.
But I'm glad, now I know what that really means.
Yeah.
Because I have friends that have done things after their name, and they really don't even own their name. Yeah. They just they can have it on their license, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I often ask a fairly hackneyed question, what's the difference to you between fashion and style? But I think more focused on footwear, what's the difference to you between a product which, has a fashion moment and one that it sounds like you strive for through GREATS that has some lasting style?
I would summarize it by saying the classic is where the longevity comes from.
And is that a way of saying it kind of looks like a lot of other things? What makes a classic?
I think that's the same for a white t-shirt. Mm-hmm. How many brands make a white t-shirt?
Right.
Thousands. How many brands make a pair of jeans? How many brands make a penny loafer? How many brands make a double monk?
Got to get my devil monk into the shot here. It's really good stuff.
Are they bench made?
No, they're not bench. They're two boot New York.
Off the shelf?
Off the shelf. Whew. Yeah.
You better.
I'm a true 11, so it's a very.
But my point is, I think that's the world where a white button down, like a white poplin button down. So then you get into those are the classics. They're the tried and true. They're always going to be there. Mm-hmm. And that's the royal for us. And then every once in a while you might wear a printed shirt. Not at work. Never at work. But that's the fashion version of Doug.
Right.
The classics last, and they survive trend, and they're generally what's used for people with style. Fashion does not make you stylish. Mm-hmm. You can have the latest fashion on, whatever it is, but you could still look like a fucking buffoon. And many times they do.
Yeah.
There's a lack of comfort. You can see it.
Yeah.
But they're trending, and they're like, they bought that thing. And most of the time I look at people that are like minimal in their styling, rooted in the classics, and just pull it off. Like to me, they're just more stylish.
Yeah.
But style is really personal. So.
It is a personal question. I mean, I think, it's important to be framed. You don't want someone to remember the clothes. In my case, the suit. I want them to remember me.
And they will.
But if
because
the suit
you really carry this well.
Well, and I not that we're talking about me, but I try not to overpower it either. Mm-hmm. It should be muted, because I think you hit on it. I mean, it's almost arresting enough to see somebody in a suit, at least at a lot of the places that we find ourselves. I mean, our offices are here on Bryant Park.
Yeah.
We're not at 52nd and Park. There still are these bastions of white collar world where this is not uncommon.
Yeah.
But focusing on the fashion industry, it is pretty uncommon to dress this way. I will say, like Tommy's always in a blue blazer.
Yeah.
And
he crushes it.
And he owns it.
He owns it. Yeah. 90 degrees out.
Yeah.
Still looks great. But that's his style.
Yeah.
Right? So it would almost be weird if you didn't see him in it.
Right. Well,
and a blue blazer is not in fashion.
No.
So that's the thing. Like, he looks so good in 1990, 2000, 2010, 2019 in basically the same outfit.
Yeah.
That's style.
Well, so I will ask, I don't know if I warned you or not, but for our listeners who are just listening to the download, what are you wearing today? And to the extent, and I want accessories, I want the whole ensemble, and to the extent what season it is, tell me what season it is.
Okay. So I'm wearing an unreleased pair of Greats.
Those things are
with
pretty
a
awesome.
hand-painted floral canvas that I designed in 2016.
Okay. It reads a little, it's like Hawaiian kind of, but also looks a little like wallpaper.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful canvas print I found in Italy that
spoke to you.
I'll bring this out next year.
Okay.
So we were a little early. The pants, I can't remember the name, but they're a carrot cut.
Well, if they were in Magazine, they're probably obscure.
They are. I'm just looking. They're obscure. Well selected from Europe.
Okay.
Personally, Josh was like,
and sort of cropped. You like to wear. You like to show ankle.
I do like to wear a crop pant. Yeah. The T-shirt is from an artist named Josh Vides.
Okay.
Who's really become quite famous, actually. He does these amazing black and white rooms. He started with rooms.
Okay.
And this pocket is all hand painted.
And he paints what? Like the furniture in the room, but on
everything's
the walls?
black and white in the room.
Yeah.
So imagine this is just painted black and white. And now he's doing it on everything. He's become... So this shirt, I should probably not wear it anymore. I should probably just put it away.
Well, but
that's not my style either.
Yeah, your style is to wear those things that others might collect.
And I've got a few pieces of art from him, and that's the T-shirt. And I'm wearing a Rolex Daytona.
Okay.
That I've had for 12 years, and I don't change my watches. I have watches, but I'll wear one for like a year.
Got it.
And then I'll go.
Do you have one of those cases that
I
winds
don't,
the
but I
automatic
need one.
ones? Yeah.
I know. Because I have.
I don't need one, but I should. A little mini one.
Yeah, I only need like a $5.
Yeah, I would.
But yeah, an automatic watch should be rotated and keeping gears and oil.
Or just put it on your dog.
But mine just sits in the closet. Yeah, put it on your dog.
Put it on your dog.
Just as a collar.
Right.
So that's what I'm wearing.
Okay. And the why? I mean, so you knew you probably had a full day. We're at the afternoon. Were there any meetings other than the podcast that, or are you one of those guys that sort of grab it and go?
I had a full day of meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them with like some of the team at Madden.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them in my office. This is how I dress in the summer.
Yeah.
I really do.
We're right at that transition. Today is rather warm, but we're almost fall. We're just about fall.
Yesterday I wore, a long sleeve button down and jeans.
Mm-hmm.
But my style is pretty consistent for like most of my life. And it's rooted in my just
well,
what I
no,
wore in high
look,
school.
you're and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I mean, you're a guy with style. It's
thank you.
Yeah, no, but you are. Like, just because you have a consistency. So I have a style question for you. I struggle when wearing tailored clothing, wearing sneakers, casual sneakers with it. How do you advise guys who are gonna wear a suit or a sport coat to wear greats, or if they're but to wear greats with that kind of an ensemble?
Well, and I'm not saying this because it's my brand and the Royal is the number one seller.
Right.
The Royal is a suit-wearing sneaker, not in white. Don't wear white.
Right.
White just reads athletic all the time. Yeah. But we do a...
Well, plus, what belt do you wear with white?
Exactly. But we do a black. We do an all black, meaning the sole is black as well. We do a gray. We do a Kuyo, which is like a tan, which basically could read like a tan loafer. Mm-hmm. And if you pick one of those colors... Just wear it the way you would wear. A black Royal would wear like a black shoe, and you might not feel comfortable with it. Yeah. That's the thing. Like,
well, and that's the reason I don't do it.
Yeah.
Because to me, part of my personal style is to be comfortable, not necessarily comfortable from a objective standpoint of he's in sweats, but comfortable that I am dressed for the day, and back to that, how should a lawyer dress? An athletic sole on a shoe, to me, is not. I'm not going to be getting rebounds for you. I'm going to be closing your deal, right? So,
but when you say athletic sole, like the Royal is not. I would not consider it an athletic sole. It's technically it's a cup sole.
Right.
It's got one thing, like one height, one silhouette. Athletic soles have lots of technical shit in there with different cushioning pods and areas, and there's usually a running shoe's thicker in the back and smaller in the front, and so are basketball shoes now. Like they have a fatter back, and ours is flat. So it's a total. I wouldn't consider it an athletic sole.
Yeah. No, this is my thing to get over if I ever get over it, and I may never. And that's perfectly fine. And that's okay.
I mean, I'm getting married in a pair of greats.
When are you getting married? When's the...
September 26th.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And where is that happening?
That's going to be in Brooklyn. I'm not going to say the venue. Okay. Maybe somebody will come and throw things at us, or who knows.
The pop.
But we made a pair of shoes for Kevin Durant.
Okay.
He wanted...
how stoked are you that he's a Brooklyn Net?
That was sick, right? Yeah. Now, this is years ago now, but like, he wanted baby Crocodile.
Okay.
So we sourced the Hermes.
There's a segment of our listeners who are right now screeching. And
that's
being
okay.
Like...
Sorry. The customer's always right.
Right. No.
So we sourced the supplier for Hermes. And we bought the skin, and his feet are huge. He's an 18, so we had to buy 2 of them, and there was enough left over to make my own pair.
Wow!
So I made a pair of black. They're super super beautiful. Like when Ralph makes a gator thing, this is that, except on my sneaker. It's
there's a designer we also represent, Jason Stalvey. You familiar with his alligator bags? Yeah, they're sort of similarly just absolutely decadent.
And it's super elegant. Like, it's just clean.
Tux?
I'm wearing a tux, yes.
Okay. And who makes the tux?
Actually, this is funny because it's not like a big fancy thing. Like, I was going to go buy a Tom Ford one, and I was like, yeah. I bought us tux last year from Bonobos, but
I've got 2 tuxes from Bonobos.
and then
they
I
wear
went and
pretty
had
well.
it. Then I went and had it like completely engineered. I
Yeah.
mean, I took it to my guy, and I'm like, I want this to fit like you made it, like off the, like
Yeah.
totally custom. And it's like I feel like a fucking James Bond. So I'm like, I'm not buying another
Done.
tux.
Done.
Like I love this tux.
Yeah, mine are more, I've got sort of a very Christmassy one, which is sort of like,
Yeah.
the green, black plaid. And then one is white, which,
Yeah.
don't always have occasion to wear that. But, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Big year for you, for sure. So I'll deep dive now into maybe, apropos of the crocodile skins, and sustainability means different things to different people. But what does, putting that aside for the moment, what does GREATS view as its responsibility with respect to, I'll say, environmental sustainability?
Yeah.
And for the record, I don't think that necessarily, a few baby crocodiles losing their lives for a pair of shoes is not environmentally sustainable.
Right. It was 4 years ago.
Talking more long term, in terms of landfill, in terms of just product and its life and how long things last.
Yeah. Well, I think that you're touching on it already. I think the first rule of responsibility or sustainability, I even struggle with the word.
Well,
Stuff.
it's a meaningless term these days,
Right.
because people in the industry use it to mean labor practices.
Yep.
They mean environmental sustainability in some state. Some business people hear sustainable and think you're just profitable.
Right.
But what I'm speaking to, you're hearing loud and clear, which is just, its environmental impact.
Yeah. So the first thing that's most important is how long does a thing last?
Mm-hmm.
Make a thing that lasts a long time, and you have a high degree of sustainability because you're not having to buy it every 6 months.
Yep.
It will last for years. That's a sustainable practice. Then the second thing is like, what is it made out of? Well, leather gets a bad rap. It's like people are saying that, cows are polluting the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Those cows are also grown for food. So without that food, the food supply in the world is going to be challenged. And that's not going to, I just don't see that changing fast. So
There
while
are conflicting views on that, for sure.
But while that cow is being grown for food,
Yeah.
let's use all of it.
Yeah.
And leather is the byproduct of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that also could be argued as a sustainable practice. I understand raising cattle and its impact on the environment, but I'm not in the cattle business. Like, if they stop using it,
You'll come up with a plant-based solution.
and we're looking at those already.
Yeah.
Those exist already, but we're not quite like. I'm just not convinced or ready to say leather should be banned from the world. I just don't know. I'm not sure.
What plant-based solutions have you looked at? And I'm not saying to replace or replicate the entire line, but have you dipped your toe in that customer facing, or is it still
there's
to come?
some, like, it's called pineapple leather.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically like they're making, it's not leather, but it's,
Yeah, no, I'm familiar. I mean, we represent Stella McCartney.
Okay, she uses it.
She uses it.
and we looked at that and we like it and we might use that. Where we did the recycled knit from plastics, and we'll continue to do that. We're putting we're at 20% now in recycled rubber in our sole, but we want to elevate that number to get as close to 100 as we can. We're using recycled insoles. They're like Ortholite is taking all the soles, chopping them up, and then remaking them.
Yep.
So we are doing. We really just started doing this about a year ago, and it's our job to continue to do more. But I don't have. I'm never going to be comfortable saying we're a sustainable company in terms of environment because we make stuff.
Yeah.
And making stuff has some impact on the environment.
Yeah.
I think the best we can do will be to be as responsible as we can, and make the things that leave the least amount of impact for what people are wanting. By the way, like, you can't force the general customer to buy something they don't want.
Yeah.
The faster they get more sustainable, we'll be
Yeah,
right there with
yeah.
them.
Well, it's a broader policy discussion, of
Correct.
course. I mean, you can tax new things more than old things.
Right.
There definitely are brands that are looking into sort of recycling their own products. Because few things last forever.
Yeah.
And few things take as much of a beating as shoes. Let's face it, they're the one thing that's in direct contact with us and the planet.
Yeah.
And just the normal wear and tear is wear and tear.
Yeah.
But it's clearly something that a large segment of your customer base and all customer bases care about. But to date, it really doesn't have. There's no regime that one can point to or certification process yet that is sort of globally acceptable where you could say we are certified by this particular nonprofit organization, and therefore that means our practices are clean in this number of ways.
Right.
And I think part of that for the industry is the production of everything is so disparate. I mean, I don't know how many different factories you use to, say, produce the Royale, but for apparel, because there are so many different elements to every garment,
Right.
you may use 8 different facilities to make one suit.
Right.
And it's very difficult to impose your regime on them from a production standpoint, or even enforce it unless you're massive and are willing to send a representative there.
And this is happening. It is happening. Zara's doing it. Adidas is doing it. We're like the big guys are doing it and demanding things. So that's great.
Yeah.
And we can't demand that, but we're looking for the places we can go, which we do, that are already doing it or provide that level of sustainability, responsibility. You talked about before though, labor. Ethical treatment of workers is mission critical for me personally.
Yeah.
And I can say proudly that the factories we use have, some of the best working environments I've ever seen in a factory. And we'll continue to do that even if we make product back in Asia, which we probably will.
Yeah.
We're probably going to make some styles that just belong to be made in Asia Italy's good at some things. They're not good at like others. They just can't make everything. They don't have the machines.
The world's learning that,
Yeah.
I feel, and that's a good thing, just in terms of general globalization and workers' rights globally. Because I think, for a long time, Asia's just been associated with cheap labor.
Yeah.
But as you know, it's not all cheap in Asia.
No, there's
Nor should it
factories
be.
that have, they're less in America for sure. But they're for China, they're well paid.
Yeah.
And I think they should all be well paid.
Yeah.
I really do. Like that. I have a funny story. We used to make stuff in Asia. About 30% of our business was Asia. Styles were $59 to $89. And I went once and I sat down with the factory owner. I'm like, hey, look, I would like to buy lunch every time our stuff is on the line. Like I want to kind of have a group of people that work on the great stuff that we can lower the quality control failure, right?
Yep.
If they're more focused on it, you will save waste.
Right.
They'll feel better, and I want to buy them lunch.
Yeah.
And he translated back. He's like, well, if you're willing to do that, just give me the money and I'll make them work hard. I swear to God.
Right.
And it freaked me out because he was missing the point. Like, the factory owner doesn't need to make more money.
Yeah.
The employees need to be treated better. And I left that factory.
Well, that's one of the great benefits of being an entrepreneur, starting your own business, and
Yeah.
being able to make those kinds of decisions. Pivoting back to influencers.
Yes.
And our mutual friend and client of this firm, Nick Wooster, he was one of the first, maybe not one of the first, but I remember doing the deal
Yep.
opposite you guys.
Yep.
Thank God for conflict waivers. To do his capsule collection with you. What do you think about the rise of the influencer as a marketing component of brand? And, what do you think it messages to consumers?
Influencers have become the celebrity of the day. that doesn't make them good designers. And Nick is, I'm not talking about Nick. Nick
Yep.
is actually really talented but he's also worked in the industry before he became an influencer.
Well, and this was ages ago,
Right.
really, at this point.
Right.
I mean, it was early days.
But like there's influencers now that are building brands, but they're not designers, and that's okay. But they're selling lots of stuff. And I it's a really interesting time. It's a transitional time. And I think they matter. I think they're going to continue to matter. The days of kind of the actor, musician only or sports star are gone. Those people still matter too, but there's this new influencer's like a catch-all.
yeah.
It's better if you're like have a skill, like
Right.
having 1 million followers because you show your ass is probably not like really an influencer.
Right.
But having 1 million followers and taking beautiful photos or making cakes or cooking, like whatever, there's a skill associated
Yeah.
with the audience. That's when you can make something of it.
Yeah. No, I think, there is a degree of influencer that really they're just good at curating their feeds.
Right.
But most of them do have some skill or some.
I'm not sure. I don't know that.
By most, I mean more than 50%.
Sure. Okay. If you say so.
But and I also probably lump into that people who you in your way back agency days would have called the talent. In a way, a Kevin Durant is an influencer as well as an athlete.
Yeah.
But he's moving the needle outside of just the court, right?
Yeah, and what really changed is technology. There was a platform now for these guys to talk all the time, show what they want to talk about, whether, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, whatever their channel is. Before those channels, you couldn't monetize the way you can today, right?
Yeah.
You did a big TV deal, you did a car deal, a liquor deal, a shoe deal, and that ran on TV and in print. Today, you can do a deal like that for a day.
Right.
$1 million, one post.
Yeah.
And that platform empowered them to do that. So that's really interesting. It also gave an opportunity for more people to do it.
For sure. And I think the sway that mega influencers like that have is perhaps dissipating a little bit because the engagement, if you have millions of followers, it's got to be. I mean, you just can't write them all thank you notes.
Right.
I have seen, again, more emerging brands, but focused brands use what we term micro influencers, which really just means they have below 1 million followers, usually below 100,000, but they have proven engagement with a core consumer group.
Yep.
And we see a lot of fashion propositions that are built around whether it's road biking or deep sea fishing or just the perfect leather flip flop, right? And they can really hit a very, very focused market outreach by curating who they go through. So I do think oddly we're back to agency, but I think some of the agencies that are popping up to manage the accounts of even micro influencers, may have a real future.
Yeah, and ultimately it is about engagement because like 1 million followers is not impressive when there's really low engagement, right?
Right.
You need people to have, it's got to have efficacy to kind of talk about like, hey, I discovered this brand through this woman or man that I really, really like, and I engage in it.
Yeah.
It's not just like I follow it.
Yeah.
And that's being smoked out. It continues to.
It is.
And it, it will. And
Feeds that look like catalogs are catalogs.
Exactly.
So yeah, get me real.
But there's a business there, and it's a meaningful one, and I think it'll continue.
And as far as now embedded, within Steve Madden, is there a pivot or change to the great story? Or is it going to remain the same and kind of have that mission statement that you had?
Yeah, the mission isn't changing. The brand isn't changing. What's changing is we now have resources to do more than this, right? Like we built the business basically on one silhouette. But I want more. Like, it wasn't like I only wanted to do that. You just, when you're allocating resources. I'll make you one dress shoe.
All right.
I made a hiking boot.
It's not alligator.
I made a hiking boot.
Okay.
It was great.
Was it a full style?
Two seasons worth.
Okay.
Made in Italy, Vibram sole.
Well, you'll get more at bats with things like that,
Yeah.
undoubtedly,
Yeah.
which will be great, and I think will be great, really for consumers.
Yeah,
and for
I
the
mean,
world.
look, we're gonna add some silhouettes to the collection, and maybe even dip in some other stuff, here and there. But we have a big opportunity ahead of us with footwear.
For sure. Well, Ryan, our time's up. That's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. For your troubles, you'll get a copy of The Laws of Style, which I think you may have one already.
Don't.
Okay, well, read the footwear section with great interest.
Thank you.
Give me notes back. And you, our listeners, can get a copy of The Laws of Style by searching on Amazon, Laws of Style, Sartorial Excellence for the Professional Gentleman, or go to my publisher, the American Bar Association's website, where you can purchase it as well. Ryan, any last shout outs? I mean, I know people know where to go for your product, but any capsules you're doing or other pro bono elements to
Well, look, if for those of you who don't know, it's greats.com. Pro bono work. Yeah, look, anybody that has an interest in starting a business, hit me up on Instagram, hit me up, email me. Actually, I don't know if email is a good idea. Find me on Instagram.
There you go.
And shoot me a direct message, because I really do like to.
You do give back.
Give guidance
You
and
provided
give advice.
mentorship. We didn't get into any of that, but maybe round two.
Yeah.
But that's always great, and I think people have a lot to learn. Hopefully, this episode got some of those points out. And thanks again for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, bye now.
You've been listening to The Laws of Style with Douglas Hand. For more information, go to our website at www.hballp.com. And you can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Hand of the Law. Thank you for tuning in, and stay stylish.